Hi, this is Sid Stewart. This is the Bible Information Station, and today we'd like to look at 25 facts concerning Abraham in the book of Genesis. He's found in numerous places throughout the entire Bible, but most of the information we have is from the book of Genesis. And I'm in our church where my wife holds her children's church. This is the Children's Church Chapel, and there's a verse on the wall that says, "Taste and see that the Lord is good." And that is a true statement. So find out for yourself all about Jesus Christ, all about the Bible, all about God's Word, all about God Himself by reading the Scripture. Read the Bible. Well, let's look at Abraham just for a few minutes today. And if I was a young person, here are some things I would like to know about Abraham. First of all, the life of Abraham is recorded in the first book of the Bible, Genesis chapters 11 through 25. Look how much space is dedicated to the life of Abraham. Abraham. But his name is used in many places throughout the Old and New Testaments. Abraham, number 2, Abraham is considered the father of the Jewish race, but the Muslims came through Abraham's son Ishmael. The Jews came through Isaac. So the Arab nations came through Ishmael, the Jewish race came through Isaac. Abraham lived to the ripe old age of 175 years old. Now, over 3 billion people in our world point to Abraham as the father of their religion, the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims. Concerning the early life of Abraham, number 5, Abraham was born of Terah, that's his father, around 2000 BC in the city of Ur, which would be modern-day Iraq. That was the ancient capital of Mesopotamia, which is now, again, that's modern Iraq. Abraham left Ur and went with his father Terah to Haran when Terah moved to Haran with his family. Imagine following your father in a caravan with camels and donkeys like this and living in tents. They were very nomadic people. They had no permanent dwelling place. Haran was also located in modern-day Iraq and was devoted to pagan religions. So much idolatry took place that God called Abraham out of that area after his father Terah passed away. Abraham was 75 years old at that point. Now, early on, Abraham was called Abram. When he was 75 years old, he moved and took his wife Sarai and his nephew Lot and all their cattle and possessions, and they moved southwest to an area that is now known as Israel, to Shechem and to Bethel in Israel. God told him that his descendants would inherit the land, and that inheritance would go all the way to the Nile River going west and going back east toward the Euphrates. Israel does not have possession of that part of the land yet, but they will one day. His early name means exalted father. Abraham means father of a multitude. Abram and his family stayed in Shechem for a while, but then they had to move westward to Egypt because of a famine. While in Egypt, the Pharaoh noticed the beauty of Abram's wife Sarai, and both Abram and Sarai were afraid that Abram would be killed by Pharaoh, and so they told the Egyptian ruler that she was his sister. Now that's kind of half right, but she was actually his half-sister. Pharaoh took Sarai to be one of his mistresses, but God put a disease over the Pharaoh's home as a punishment for this. This angered Pharaoh, and so he told both Abram and Sarai to leave, which I imagine at that point they were very glad they could and would. At this point, they also had a servant girl named Hagar, and she went to Canaan land with them. God visited them in a unique way through an angel and promised that both aged Abram and Sarai would have a child in their old age. And after years of waiting, Sarai made a suggestion. The servant woman Hagar could bear a child for her. Abram consented to this idea, and so at the age of 86, Hagar bore to him a son named Ishmael. But a problem arose. Ishmael was not the child that God promised. Ishmael was born out of a fleshly humanistic solution. And so after 13 more years, God once again promised a child to Abram and Sarah as a result of a natural union. At this point, God changed Abram's name to Abraham, and he changed her name to Sarah. Abraham was 99 years old at this point, and Sarah was 89. 1 year after Sarah gave birth to Isaac, 1 year later, she gave birth to Isaac, The name Isaac means he laughs, because Sarah laughed at the thought of bearing a child in her old age. Sarah did not like Hagar and Ishmael and was very jealous of them. She thought maybe they would inherit Abraham's possessions and the blessing and the promise of a Messiah coming. She demanded that they both leave and go into the wilderness. God visited weeping Hagar and promised her that her son would also be a father of many nations. The sons of Ishmael would be the foundation of the Arab nations later, like Kuwait and Saudi Arabia and Iraq and Iran and so forth. So God kept his word to Hagar. Number 18 in our 25 facts about Abraham, God gave Abraham and Sarah a beautiful baby boy named Isaac. And Isaac was born as a result of God's promise, so he was the promised child. Later, when some years later, after Isaac had grown up to be a young teenager, God was going to throw to Abraham a very unique test. When Isaac was a young teenager, God told Abraham to go up into a mountain with fire and wood and perform a sacrifice. They climbed Mount Moriah, and Abraham took Isaac and was prepared to sacrifice him to God. God stopped the sacrifice and placed a male sheep in the bushes so Abraham could sacrifice the ram instead of Isaac as God had initially commanded. He was testing Abraham's faith. And in the book of Hebrews, we're told, in the New Testament book of Hebrews, we're told that Abraham had the faith that if he was put to death, God would raise him from the dead. So that's Abraham's thoughts on that subject. Later, Sarah passed away, and Abraham married a woman named Keturah and had 6 more sons. Now, at the age of 175, Abraham died and was buried in Hebron with Sarah, his first wife. Hebron is only about 20 miles south of Jerusalem. Both Isaac and Ishmael attended the funeral. The name Abram is found 54 times in the Old Testament, and Abraham is found 231 times. So this important patriarch is mentioned 281 times total in the Bible. Total, 281 times. Abraham and Isaac and Jacob were Old Testament patriarchs. This word means family ruler. So God knew that these men would be strong rulers for their families, and that is sure what our country needs today. Strong family men. They go to church and love God and serve God. In the New Testament, Jesus, Peter, Paul, James, and the writer to the Hebrews all refer to Abraham. In Hebrews chapter 11, the writer tells us that everything Abraham did was by faith. Abraham looked for a city whose builder and maker is God, and that's a good way to go. And then finally, 25 facts on Abraham. According to Matthew chapter 1, verse 1, Jesus Christ is the son of David, but also the son of Abraham. This means that Christ had Jewish blood flowing through his veins, and that as a son of David, he has the right to be the king of Israel. In chapter 28, we're told he has all power of creation, so that means he also has the right to be the king of the whole universe. And folks, that's good news, so go and taste and see that the Lord is good. Thank you for joining us with the Bible Information Station.